just want to say it's a huge honour and privilege to be on the stage in Wexford Arts Centre, like from being a youngster here and being on plays and being in shows and doing youth theatre here. It's nice to finally have the stage all to myself. Who's laughing now? So yes, thanks so much for coming to this. It's going to be kind of like a look through kind of like my origin story. Every superhero, I'm not saying I'm a superhero. Every origin story, every superhero has their origin story. This is kind of mine. And the Arts Centre plays a part in my origin story. One of the first art competitions I ever won was when I was 4 years old for the Lions Club exhibition, and they hung one of my paintings downstairs in the Arts Centre. Unfortunately, I can't show that here today because it was vandalised, but it was vandalised by Banksy. Instead, I'll show you a few of my other early achievements to when I became Wexford's #1 Transformers artist. So, this is how I used to start off. I used to draw in exercise books. I used to make my own Transformers comics because I was obsessed with Transformers. And so this is, I was about 7 years old when I started doing this. I used to like Transformers because the cars were the characters. But basically what I was doing then was reading the Transformer comics that were already out and just remixing them and basically telling the same story. There was a writer and an artist, there was a writer called Simon Furman who used to write these, and an artist called Jeff Senior, and they were the first people whose names I kind of learned to go, hang on, people make these and they have names and it's someone's job to do this. So maybe someone out there will remember my name and think about the day they met the great Nick Roche. So yeah, this is me drawing some Transformers, age 7, throwing Transformers into the head of the what's it called, the monument in Dakota. This is Ultra Magnus giving everyone a day off, because that's what I thought Transformers did. It was about if you defeat evil, you get the day off. As a 40-year-old, I now know that evil never rests. 7 years later, this is me when I'm 14. I'm still drawing in exercise books. Still drawing Transformers, which when I'm 14 in the 1990s in Wexford is not, it's like drawing a massive target on your back basically. Transformers were very much kind of a kid's thing then, and being a kind of a geek past the age of, into nerdy superheroes and robots past the age of like 9 or 10 didn't seem to be kind of a cool thing. I mean maybe it's still not cool, but it seems to be more socially acceptable now. So this is me age 14, the slightly more detailed Transformers, kind of doing their own things. I was kind of writing my own stories about them now and being a bit more original. But you see, it's a sort of Transformers comic a 14-year-old boy would draw. It's all kind of it's violent. These Transformers are being crucified. There's like heads on spikes here. So I'm kind of combining like my two influences at the time, which were giant Japanese transforming robots and the Catholic Church, basically. But it's important to remember not only the fact that I was remembering artists and writers' names earlier on and stuff, but also to remember really violent robots and Catholic symbology. That will come back into play later on. So yeah, it's really angsty. I didn't have a girlfriend. So that was when I was 14. When I was 14, I also put out a comic in Wexford with two other of my friends, Lee Kelly and Wayne Daly. And we put together an anthology comic called Alternative, because we were the alternative to all the other comics that kids from Wexford were putting out. And it was like superheroes, and it was set in the futuristic year of Wexford 2010. And there was kind of like robot drones searching the sky, and it was all desolate, and Burger Mac was closed, and it was awful. So we did that as an anthology comic, and we couldn't really get, we were doing our junior cert at the time, we couldn't really get the momentum going to put out like a regular comic. So the following year I put out my own comic, starring my own breakout character, Captain Ireland. Marvel were less lawyer happy back then. They were less likely to sue a 15-year-old. And I wasn't making much money on it anyway. But with the Arts Centre being part of my origin story, it comes into it again. The local arts council here let me use their printing press. They printed out hundreds of copies. I was able to sell copies all over Wexford. It got sold up in Forbidden Comic Shop up in Dublin. And so at like 15, I was self-publishing, writing and drawing my own comic. But we needed to scrape resources from everywhere. So the Arts Centre at the time sponsored €10 worth or £10 worth of photocopying for me, which goes further than you think. So it's really nice again to be able to show this stuff up here. So this is Captain Ireland. No powers. He's basically awful. He was going to be a cop, but in the year 2010 the cops had special superpower armor things, and then he stops being a cop, but he keeps all his armor, so he gets to be a vigilante. So this is it, because he's back in a new costume. This is after the original, because everyone was waiting in 1995. It was Blur versus Oasis, but Captain Ireland was there too. And so this is the comic I was doing, lots and lots of words, no editor. That's what I spent my summer doing. We got 2 issues out of it. It's going to be a 3-issue mini-series. That sounds cool. But then I started school back in September that year, and I only got halfway through the 3rd issue. I never got the 3rd issue out because I thought if it doesn't come out monthly, then no one's going to be interested in it. I still get people on Twitter asking me, when is issue 3 of Captain America coming out? And in the 90s, comics were late all the time, and I didn't know that. So yeah, it's just a bloke going around beating lads up in Wexford Town, basically. So this is a few years later. This is when I'm like 19 years old. I've decided that what I want to do is draw comics, but what I'm not prepared to do is go to college and have anyone teach me anything. I was 16 when I did my legal cert, and I felt I was too young to really leave home, and as my wife will tell you, I'm not very good at even looking after myself now, so it would have been a disaster then. So my mum and dad just let me stay in the house, draw, and they figured it was going to pay off eventually. And they kept extending that deadline by a few years. But at 19, I really thought I had it. So this is my submission that I did for DC Comics. I was going to send this off. It's just a Batman beating up some thugs in a multi-story car park. Lots of black again. I'm so angsty, guys. I'm for real. I'm serious. I mean it, guys. I had lots of headaches from Sharpies. But no one wanted that. At the same time, I was doing the samples for X-Men and things like that, and just getting rejection letters from like Marvel Comics. And so I did various other jobs that kind of showed the society that I was a useful part of it. I worked in the youth theatre, or I worked in the street theatre company. I worked in Bulk here in town. I worked in a toy shop. I did lots of drawing in my mum and dad's house. And then a few years later, I loved Transformers since I was a kid. That's all I wanted to do. But in the 90s, Transformers didn't really exist as a thing. Like I said, Britpop happened and obviously took over Transformers space in the cultural zeitgeist. There was a comic company making Transformers comics from like 2001 to 2005, but they lost the license because they weren't paying people. And so Hasbro, the toy company who owned Transformers, they gave the license to another company called IDW Publishing in San Diego. At the time, I decided like I needed to do something. This comics thing wasn't working out. I was going to do a comic with a friend of mine in Dublin called Dave Hendrick. He and I were going to do like a Irish crime comic just for ourselves, and no one was going to pay us to do it. And at the same time, I decided at 25 years of age, I should probably go to college and do something. So I'd gotten into animation college, and I was going to go leave that year, go move to Dublin and do animation college. And then that summer, this comic company got the license to do Transformers. And my friend who I was doing the crime comic with knew the editor of the company. So he sent all my Transformers samples off to the editor of this company. And the same day I got an email saying, basically, would you like to draw Transformers first? And the first thing I had to do was draw the editor of the company as a Transformer. And when the editor of a comic company asks, hey, draw me like a robot, draw me like one of your French robots, but maybe that's what you do. And so this is my first ever kind of published professional work. And we just kind of clicked. They could tell that I like Transformers. Also, as a Transformers fan, I read other comics as well. I'd be reading X-Men, and I'd be exposed to lots of different comic styles where a lot of Transformers artists would just draw the toys moving. But this IDW Publishing, they're kind of like an indie sort of company. They kind of like let people use their own artistic styles. And because I put a bit more like bounce and a slight more kind of cartooniness into my Transformers, my characters, they seem to like that. So eventually they started letting me draw Transformers. This is my first cover. This plane's, attacking the city. I hadn't realised it, but I actually submitted this to IDW Publishing on the date of September 11th, 2005. Just sent it off to my American publishing company, thought that would be a good idea. And they still published it, so it's fine. But every time I looked at the date, I was like, oh God, guys. he asked me, "Did you want so you draw it? Do you want to color it as well?" I'm like, "Sure." So I colored it as well, and it took me 48 hours, and that's why I don't color my own comics. So, but it was cool. That's my very first kind of like published cover. It was on Transformers issue 1. At this stage, I felt like I'd won the lottery. You know, like it's kind of, and even if it all had gone and finished down, in my head, for other comic artists, their favorite comics are, you know, like the cool ones, like, you know, like X-Men and Batman and all the Vertigo comics. I like the robots that turn into cars, so I done it. I scratched it off the list, but they kept me around. This is one of the other comics I drew within the first year. So I was talking earlier on about the first writer that I ever knew the name of was called Simon Furman. He was writing Transformers comics when I was 6 and 7. At this stage, I'm 25 and 26, and he's still writing the Transformers comics. He's my favourite comics writer, and he wrote the first issue that I got to draw. And we got to do like this comic together that people still quite like. When you get the comics, people don't like everything. But this one seems to sort of stick. It's this dude Shockwave fighting the Dinobots, who you can kind of see in shadow behind, and it was just a childhood dream come true. So it's another one of those things of like, okay, if it stops now, it's fine. I can say I've done it. It was 15 years ago, and so I've got 15 years worth of slides to keep going here, basically. So one of the other titles I did when I was with Transformers was Transformers Infestation, which is Transformers versus zombies in Las Vegas. And this was notable for a few reasons as well, because this comic was written by a writer and artist team called Andy Lanning and Dan Abnett. Now, at the time, Andy Lanning and Dan Abnett were famous for writing Guardians of the Galaxy, and the same style of Guardians of the Galaxy that Marvel adapted into the movie later on. So just that kind of really silly, like everyone kind of taking the mick out of each other, just lots of bats in space. So it was kind of rare that like Marvel kind of big time comic writers would come down to Transformers and slum it with us. But they did it, they enjoyed it, and I enjoyed working with them, and we kind of clicked. What I did at the end of this, under the advice of one of my friends, Declan Shalvey, who's one of Irish comics' biggest and brightest, he sort of said, if you've got on really well with these guys and you want to impress them, send them a little thank you note with some of their characters on it. So he drew a Rocket Raccoon, Nova, and a character called Death's Head 2 that they had worked on as well in the 90s. And I sent it to them, and they were really chuffed, and they liked it. Remember this for later. I also did a Transformers comic, which is basically I Am Legend with robots. It's like a zombie, an old Transformer stuck on a planet where zombies attack his shack at night time, and all he's got to do is make it through to the dawn, and he'll be fine. And he's slowly losing his mind. So again, this is where the whole sort of, when I was 14, when I was drawing robots with body parts flying everywhere, this is where this kicks in. So you can kind of see here, it's a kind of a transition of nighttime, and the moon is kind of like waxing and waving, and he's getting more and more kind of paranoid, and you can shows how kind of much fun comics can be, because you can start off with like a distant shot and see the creatures looming around outside, but the cameras get closer on him and closer on him and closer on the thing that's riding until the sun comes in, and then you can kind of relax. This is the first Transformers comic that I ever wrote that I was paid for. As a kid, I had written 115 of them. No one paid for me. In fact, I had paid myself. It was because I just had made a good relationship with the publishing company through emails with them. They knew that I was familiar with the comics. They knew that I, wouldn't shut up, so I could use words. They liked the sort of style of drawing I was doing. And again, this sort of Transformers comic hadn't been done before. It's kind of very scratchy and inky, and it kind of gets inside the style of the characters, kind of like worries and fears. There's 2 more pages from it. The zombies are kind of attacking, so it's just lots of people. Lots of robots just getting their arms and legs chopped off. And that's the thing, I have no interest in watching like horror movies or stuff that's like really gross and yucky and people getting hurt if it's humans in it. But there's something about robots means you can kind of get away with and do whatever you want. Even the toy company lets do this stuff. That kind of led on to this thing called Last Stand of the Wreckers. This is one of my Transformer comics that I co-wrote with my friend James. And I drew it, and it's basically like the Expendables but with robots. There's like prison being taken over by an evil Decepticon, and no one has been in or out of it in 3 years, so they send in this kind of bunch of like kind of rookies on their first day in the job. I think one of them survives the story, everyone else is just cut down. And again, this is it. This goes straight back to that ridiculous stuff I was drawing when I was 14, of like robots being, like toys being pulled apart. I was really careful with my toys as well. I really looked after them. But I like smashing up other people's ones. And so this is it. It's just like robots just like hurting each other with a crimson red background on a desolate prison planet. Just people getting their heads spiked and robots pulled apart. And people really liked it. At the time, kind of Transformers comics were playing it a little bit safe. And we were kind of the first series of creators in Transformers comics that had grown up reading them, because the people who were writing them in the 1980s and 1990s were men in their 20s and 30s who were just doing it as a paycheck. It was a toy advert, basically. But, you know, one man's toy advert is another man's Watchmen or The Dark Knight Returns. And so we just treasured those comics and tried to sort of like use those as building blocks to write, you know, relatively kind of, you know, what we told ourselves as serious stories. But it's just an excuse to draw broken toys. But people responded to it, people liked it. It was immediately after the Michael Bay Transformer movie had come out, the first one. And there was lots of kind of new people, sets of eyes on Transformers at the time. But those same sets of eyes were not always impressed with the movies, because they're just, the tone of them is a little bit crass and non-inclusive. But what we were kind of doing in the comics was a little bit more diverse, a little bit more kind of thoughtful, and there's still robots getting smashed up, as you can see. So this led on to a sequel that we did a few years later called Sins of the Wreckers, which is even more cheerful. What I'm trying to do with this one is trying to like do things on every page that maybe, or not every page, and every issue that maybe you haven't seen before. I'll come back to that in a second. This is one of the pieces that's down in the exhibition. You can see the original artwork of it. And again, you're kind of playing with time signatures a little bit. You know, you're kind of using the kind of the panels to kind of show one destination on Earth, and these things happening. There's a police car kind of moving through the Arctic tundra and kind of coming along, these encountering all these animals. In the meantime, the backdrop is kind of the start of the mystery of like a robot floating in space. And it's just kind of nice things you can do. You know, you're in charge, you're the director and the script writer, and with the way you kind of, you know, you pose the characters, and you kind of, you know, you're the actor as well. So this was something I wrote and drew this one myself. It's following on this from the story of Last Stand of the Wreckers. And a lot of this is kind of the Autobots, kind of the ones that are turning cars and vehicles here, kind of fighting these evil Transformers that can now disguise themselves as Earth animals. So they could be anything. So there's like, you know, spiders and wolves and all that sort of stuff. And it was just them on Earth having no idea, because they're sworn to protect the creatures of Earth. But then the creatures of Earth are starting to attack them, as you can see here. This is a robot drop kicking a polar bear. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to draw something every issue. Every issue was like, I don't think anyone's seen an Autobot. Just like kick an endangered species in the face. But it's, again, I have to clarify, that is later on it's revealed that's a Decepticon. That's an evil robot that's well able to fend for itself. But still, I had fun drawing this though, right? So, similarly, this is a robot spider that's inside another robot's head, and he bursts out in spider mode. It's one for the kids. And again, I'm just amusing myself at this stage, really, you know. And we got to do it again then, and we got to do like the third part of it, and got to kind of finish up the story. This character was the first human Transformers character way back in my first issue that I drew the cover 4 years ago, and I got to draw like her last kind of appearance and the end of her story. So it's all very poignant. I talked about Simon Furman getting to work with him. He was the writer that drew Transformers. But the road Transformers who I wanted to work with, and as an artist, my first ever gig was working with him. And then, because there was flashback scenes in this, and I wanted to look a little bit retro, look a little bit like the old comics, while some of the characters reminisced, I managed to get my favourite artist, Jeff Senior. So the guy who I was copying when I was 6 years old, 2 years ago, he drew my story. I drew the rest of it, and then he drew 6 pages out of it for the flashback scenes. And it was just, again, it just finished me off there. I'm done. And then that's kind of the last bit where the character I've been writing about all those years kind of gets to say goodbye to his team. So that was kind of, I was coming to the end of Transformers there. Just because I've been drawing them so long, again, for free since as a 5-6 year old, but professionally for close to 15 years. While all this was going on though, I was also working for other publishers. I'd done a little bit of Ninja Turtles for Titan, I'd done a little bit with Doctor Who, and just doing covers for other people, other titles. But I had always wanted to draw for Marvel Comics. And my favourite character was a character called Death's Head, who I'm sure is everyone else's favourite. Anyway, like he's my favourite character. He first appeared, Marvel Comics used to print Transformers comics. And this character, Death's Head, was a bounty hunter who was after the Transformers. And when Transformers went to other publishers, Marvel kept Deadset because he appeared in their pages first. And I just loved him because he was a robot who would hunt down other robots. He was kind of like a robot Deadpool before Deadpool. And he's my favourite character. And then about 7 years ago, my daughter was 7, so that means it was 7 years ago, Marvel decided they're going to bring this character back. Oh, hang on a second. Interlude. So this is Monster Motors. This is written by the guy who wrote the Minions movie and the Secret Life of Pets movies. It's called Brian Lynch. And he's a big comics fan, and he likes to write comics as well. And he wanted to do a comic about all the classic monsters, Frankenstein and Dracula and Van Helsing, all those characters, but imagine them as vehicles. So you have Frankenride, Cadillacula, and Minivan Helsing. And it was just the most fun we ever did. It was just like all those original kind of characters. So these zombie monsters are called zombies. They're all vehicles from like a junkyard that were kind of being reanimated. And that's like Minivan Helsing there, kind of that's them surrounded by the zombies, all the vehicles. And we thought this was it. We thought this was going to be our merchandising dream. It hasn't happened yet. Everything designed in it to be a toy or a Christmas playset. And these are the characters for that. And it was my first kind of freedom of doing creator-owned comic. Like this is the first time this story had been done. And it just offers you so much freedom because there's no wrong way to do it. But there's also no right way to do it because it hasn't been done before. If you're drawing like Spider-Man or Transformers, it has been done. You're still their caretaker. There's a kind of, it goes to a point where there's a right way or a way that people won't buy it. So I remember just being like really, when you take on something yourself that you kind of your own, that you're creating yourself, it's really free, but there's also a little bit too much freedom in it. But one of the things I have to say is I was able to draw super cartoony and super lively, and even the vehicles are, they have like a nice bounce to them. I think from drawing Transformers and drawing machines for so long, I was able to add a bit of character to them in a way that maybe some of the other Transformers artists wouldn't have been able to do. So that was my little side quest that I did while I was working on Transformers. It still might be my favorite job. So anyway, here's Deadset. He's a Marvel character. There's two Deadsets. He's like Deadpool, but he's also like Doctor Who because there's different versions of him, different times, and they fight each other. This one on the left is Deadset 1. He was the original 80s version. This one is Deadset 2. Clever. He's like really 90s because he's got metal dreadlocks. And so these characters were just my favorite. All my copybooks and school books were just like riddled with these characters. But he was kind of done by like 1990. That character was done as well. They weren't going to bring him back, weren't they? They were. And so Andy Lanning, who wrote the Transformers Infestation, the zombie Transformers in Vegas, that classic, you all have it. And he was writing this because he was one of the big Marvel writers, and he got to write this big event where they took all the UK Marvel characters, the British Marvel characters, and kind of brought them back. And I tapped him an email saying, "Hey Andy, I just want to throw my hand," because at this stage I hadn't worked for Marvel. A lot of my friends were starting to work for Marvel, and I was starting to think, oh look, it might not happen. I'm just going to be happy with it because I told myself I'd be happy if I just draw Transformers. I really want to do something for Marvel. So I emailed Andy and I sort of said, I'd just throw my hat in the ring. And he was like, I was pretty much just going to contact you because looking in front of me, I have that sketch that you sent me a few years ago after we worked together, and I think you'd be really good working on Deadset. I'll put your name forward to one of the Marvel editors. So it just seemed like, after all my trying and hard work, because even while I was on Transformers, I was doing samples for Marvel to try and work for them. And it was just felt like, eventually it just kind of landed. It felt like the timing was right, in the right place at the right time, and you make the right connections, and you impress people, and you show them you're eager to work, and you're ready to go. And so they said, yeah, we'll have you do one of these UK Marvel characters. Do you want to draw super soldiers? Now, you guys don't know who Deathhead is. I barely know who super soldiers were. But it's Marvel offering you work, and so you're like, yes, I will draw your Marvel comic for you, Stan Lee. It wasn't Stan Lee. But I will draw your Marvel comic for you. Except they didn't say that. I was like, yeah, I heard you got Death's Head. You might be doing Death's Head. And they're like, yeah, I don't think your stuff is really suitable for it. Do you think you could kind of like do some, samples to try out for it? And so I drew this, sent it off to the editor. Union Jack sort of as a cape, symbolism. And I thought this was really impressive. Now I can draw the characters you want. And they're like, yeah, it's not really what we're after. Like, we're looking for like something a bit kind of like crazy and like, you know, over the top and, you know, make it look like kind of a heavy metal album cover, that sort of thing. And like the fact that they were entertaining me was ridiculous. They had offered me the Marvel comic at this stage, and I was already making the noise. And so I said, okay, I'll come. I'll try it. And this is what I sent to them. And that's it, color. And needless to say, I got the job. But this is I had to just tap into that 14-year-old again. Just go heavy on things. Just go over the top. Just go. Have knives sticking in the character's back, you know, it's just ridiculous. It's what comics can be, and so they sort of said, yeah, you can do it. And so this is a selection of the layouts I did. Where you kind of, when you're working for Marvel, so Transformers, they tend to trust me just because I proved myself early on. Marvel, they want to kind of like inspect every step of the way. So these are kind of the layouts for the first 4 pages of it, and they're very, very loose. Like, you know, I can see what they are, and the editors can kind of rough out. I get an idea what they are. At this stage, they're trying to basically know that you're leaving enough space for the speech balloons and the thought balloons and all the dialogue. And so, and that you can tell a story that even if, you know, they can at least see there's a flow, things are clear, things are kind of, and you can kind of see stuff that makes sense. You can see a kind of one figure here with another character over his shoulder. You know, you can see one character here slicing a character in twain. And those are the rough layouts for it, and then they turn into kind of these pages here, so that's kind of things. So let's see, that's page. If you look at this page here, you can kind of see there's these figures kind of dropping down. There's a central character here looking up. You can also see another character that's like blasting with a cannon, firing other characters. So if you keep your eye on that image there, and you move it to that, and you can see that's it here, and these are all the characters. So these are like the finished inks. They'll go to a colorist then, because like I said, it'll take 48 hours to color one image. They can do it in hours, and you know, this is the character blasting here. And so the very loose visual information was able to tell them that I've got this. So these are some pages from my first ever Marvel comic drawing. My first ever Marvel comic drawing. My favorite Marvel character, not yours. That's fine. It's mine. And yeah, those are the first 2 pages. That's that character. Yeah, that we're showing where he's got Captain Britain over his shoulder. This is the layouts I was showing you where he's like slashing through 2 characters. They're just like dust zombies. No one's really getting hurt in these comics. And again, I just had so much fun. You can just see how over the top and how much energy. I just really wanted to impress them, so they'd ask me to do more, and they did. This is a comic again called New Warriors. Hands up, no, never mind. Look, I'm working for Marvel. I don't care what they're asking me to do. I mean, New Warriors is like a team of like teenage superheroes. It involves one of the many clones of Peter Parker. So that's what this figure here is. He's called Scarlet Spider. The whole time I was drawing him, I kept telling myself, is he a clone of Peter Parker, or is he really Peter Parker? So I convinced myself that I was drawing Spider-Man the whole time. But this is them with Thor. This is a character here called Mr. Whiskers. I co-created him, so if he ever shows up in a Marvel movie, I get money. He's not going to show up. And this is more of the New Warriors as well. It's them entering a tavern, and it's just lots of fun. It's in some ways being asked to draw a comic that you don't have a huge amount of affection for. It's still Marvel. You're still drawing superheroes for Marvel, so you're kind of getting the itch is being scratched. But because it kind of gives you a little bit of freedom as well, you know. Sometimes when you're on a project and you care too much, I find the pressure can be a little bit overwhelming. But yes, this is also a New Warriors. I got to draw these characters, the Avengers show up. So again, I'm crossing off all these things of like, if it finishes today. At this stage in my actual life, I'm hungry for it. I'm not letting it go. So that's Iron Man and Thor. So that was my third Marvel comic, and I got to draw them. So I was pretty happy. And then doing bits and bobs. I was back working on Transformers after that. We did some more Monster Motors. Did some other things here and there, comics wise. And then in 2017, I met up with one of the Marvel editors, and we got on pretty well. And she liked my style, my cartoony sort of style. She gave me some work doing a Star Wars cover and a Deadpool cover. You can see the Star Wars cover downstairs. They were looking for a new artist to do to help relaunch this Spider-Man comic called Renew Your Vows. And Your Vows is imagining if Spider-Man and Mary Jane were married and it's in the future, and they have a daughter who's also got spider powers. So she's like a teenager, and she's kind of learning how to be a superhero. And the gist was that Peter Parker, he's full of like angst and insecurity because he only got his powers as a teenager, and he's already grown up as a sort of a scared, anxious teenager. But what if, you had the power and the responsibility since you were born, and they're trying to keep their daughter in check? So these are the layouts. You see, these are on display as well. These are the layouts I was showing. The first page is like a meeting the Sinister Six, and then you kind of meet Annie is her name. She's Annie Parker. These are the layouts as well. Again, they're a little bit more detailed, a little bit more clear, but again, you can see the very basic action. There's plenty of space left for speech balloons, and then these are the inks for the originals. So again, you're just crossing off like that's nearly half of Spider-Man's villains on one page. You have to draw like a cool splash page of Spidey's daughter. That's the colours. Drawn. They're coloured by an Irish colourist called Ruth Redmond. There's so many Irish creators in like Marvel and DC and across the board, like male and female. It's just, and we seem to have a good reputation for them as well. Like, I'm going to change that. More pages. Draw Spider-Man. And he enters the scene, and he's there trading dad jokes with his daughter. And that's Ruth's colours on top of it as well. And yeah, again, just a pleasure and a privilege. This is Death's Head, my favourite character. They brought him back last year. They're bringing him back in his own series. Again, I didn't think that was going to happen. One of my friends who worked on Transformers comics got asked to draw the inside of it, so we haven't spoken since. But they asked me to do the covers, and so I was pretty happy with that. And first issue involved Death's Head at a punk club. So I just this cover I ended up doing seemed to grab a lot of attention within Marvel, and actually ended up with me getting further work because of this cover. And so it's, I got to have lots of fun kind of putting in all the detail. And I think you can almost see, like, when the times when I'm having really fun, you can sort of see the energy kind of shows it. I made sure to draw myself into the cover of a Marvel comic. So again, if I ever appear in a Marvel movie, they own me. This is the inks for this is down below as well. Down the exhibition, you can see it. But when they ask you to do a cover, they ask you to send in like lots of sketch options. And so this is all the sketch options. Again, I was eager. It's Death's Head, it's issue 1. So I kind of have like him playing the guitar. And to be honest, I love this. Really happy with it. I think this is the one I would have gone for. I think it would have been a good like poster and album cover. Kind of him do it, kind of the Clash guitar sort of be destroyed thing as well. Him diving into the stage, and then this is the one they kind of picked. It's a weird kind of process because you have an editor and then there's an editor-in-chief. The editor-in-chief often errs on the side of just playing it straight. Just this is a Marvel-y sort of cover, less so of kind of the funny, goofy ideas. And I don't know. I think sometimes the thing that's going to make you pick up a comic is something that's a little bit different. I put lots of kind of Easter eggs in here. This whole thing, you'd be able to kind of look at it closely down below. But there's like stickers on the wall, and they've all got little Easter eggs to do with kind of things that are kind of like important to me. This is Fire Princess, is the name of my daughter and my son's band. They're 5 and 7, so it's the first time they've been mentioned on the Arts Centre stage. One day they might even beat the capacity record held by my younger brother for his band playing here. So I should mention that. This is Frankenstein Bolts. They're a Wexford band as well. I wanted to get them on the front cover of a Marvel comic. Selway was the band that I was in with my sister for 3 weeks in 1998. Blackshot is a reference to The Darkness. They've got a song called The Darkness, and I did an album cover for them and some video work for them. So again, it's just me, basically smelling my own fumes and being delighted with myself and working for Marvel at the same time. This is issue 2. These are all my cover options as well. There's the story is about Death's Head. He's got a son that he didn't know about, even though he's a robot. And so I wanted to do lots of things where there's a little baby robot in a kind of a harness with blasters, and I wanted to do one where Death's Head is walking through the park with his like yummy mummy sunglasses and his frappuccino, and there's another character where two of the Avengers are kind of having Death's Head's hiding in their apartment, so I wanted to draw like he's having a pillow fight with them, and they're all the ones I really wanted to go for, but this is the one that they picked. I'm not complaining, I am complaining. Don't tell them I'm complaining. But that's it. It's based on the original cover to the very first Death's Head. comic back in the 80s, so that's why they wanted to have a little nod to that. This is the third issue. This is a bit more fun, alright. They kind of, the two Death's Heads fight each other in it, so they kind of wanted to do that as a boxing match. So that was a strong, the editor kind of came up with that idea, and it was quite a strong concept, and so there was other ideas where you're kind of looking through one of the Death's Head's legs, kind of one of them up against the ropes. There's another one where there's like lots of clones of Death's Head, so the team kind of like made a sea of robots. I think this one they picked the right one. That's Felipe Sobriero, Chilean colours, then he's coloured these. Then this is the final issue. And again, it's about this team. The whole series is about Death's Head basically forming a family unit with some of the young Avengers. And so I kind of wanted to do like a family portrait thing amongst all these wanted posters of his gang, or them sitting on a couch with some popcorn while they watch TV. But again, the editor-in-chief, so my editor loved those ones. The editor-in-chief picked kind of the Marvel sort of one. And look, I'm happy that I drew this, and it is, it worked out cool. But I think I'd love to have kind of picked some of the funnier ones. I think, it might even make some of you pick up a Death's Head comic, So, and then that's the colours again. So yeah, that brings us to a very, very, very brief hard sell. So this is what I'm working on at the moment. It's for IDW Publishing. I'll finally be allowed to write and draw my own comic that I made up myself. And it's called Scaring Hood. It's written by me, drawn by me. It's coloured by an Irish colourist called Chris O'Halloran. And it is about a group of parents who go ghost hunting while their kids are in preschool. But they've got to be back by lunchtime to pick up the kids. And it's like a cross between Catastrophe and Stranger Things. Or it's like the Goonies if they were grown up, but with mortgages and anxiety attacks. And it's basically that sort of thing, like, what is more scary? Is it demons hidden under the play school, or is it remembering to pick up your kid? And I can tell you which one of those it is. Yeah, it's that one. So this is it. That's one of the teasers for it. It's a Ouija board on a fridge there. It's got all the hints about it. So get Scooper to school, hunt ghosts, fight demons, get coffee, pick up Scooper lunchtime, and that's basically the pitch for the series there. And there's all that little hints about kind of like you can sort of see that there's the dad and the daughter. Where's the mother? I'm not telling you that. Buy it. This is the cover drawn by my friend Declan Shalvey. Each comic has varied covers. So this is like my cover, arty. His also arty, but you get a choice. So it's really cool. And so this is a few pages from it, and it'll be available in comic shops. And it's an odd market with American comics. They don't kind of come to news agents or the book centre, unfortunately. When it's collected as a book, it'll be easy to order. But unfortunately, you can only kind of buy it. But do buy it, order it. These comic shops will deliver to you. It's out in October, and so these are the first few pages of it. The parents waiting outside preschool while they wait for their kids. And it's also a lot of it kind of comes from when you start bringing your kids to school and you're in the waiting rooms and you just don't know what to talk about with these people. And you're kind of sick of talking about, no, you do swimming lessons this week, coffee, Prosecco o'clock. And you're just like, what? I like when we talk about interesting things and like hunting ghosts, and it's also about seeing like your own kids be better at making friends than you are at the school gates when you go to talk to these complete strangers. And so just imagine what if you had to talk to these strangers about, ghosts and demons and your life. This is part of it then as well. So there's kids go off on a school trip and some of the adults get left behind, and they end up basically remembering like an urban myth about a kid going missing in the school. And they end up going to the stage to see if they, underneath the stage to see if they can find something about it. They find an old statue with branches growing all over it. And the statue's head gets broken. Bad things happen. So yeah, this is one of the pages, the original pages is down below as well. So it's called Scaring Hood. It is $4.99. It comes out in time for Halloween. This is the cover for issue 2. That'll be in November. This is the cover for issue 3. So yeah, and that brings me bang up to date and bang on time for anyone who wants to ask me any questions. So, if you want to do a Q&A, I guess we can. I guess people, yes, straight into it.
So many questions. do like a finished cover?
Who's asking? Because if it's my editor, I need to tell them. It depends on the cover. I try and give myself 2 days for a cover.
And how many hours per day?
They're long days.
They're long days.
I think I can usually get a cover done in kind of 2 8-hour days. I try and do that, but it does depend on the cover. So like the Death Set cover where he was in the rock club and stuff, those would have been long days. But so you could be looking at maybe 24 hours per cover, all in.
And then the other question I have to
ask.
So you started off when you were little doing Sharpies and pencils and biros and da. Is it all different now? Is it all done on computers?
Can be. I still go traditionally with it. It's a good question because it's something I didn't kind of go into. So yeah, I still draw traditionally. I just never got a feel for drawing digitally. There's pros and cons of both. If you draw traditionally, you have the original copies of it, so you can have a lovely exhibition in the Wexford Arts Centre, and you can sell original pieces as well if you wanted to.
But how do you send your originals in? Do you have to scan them in and then?
So I just scan them in, and then so the digital equipment I have. So I've got like a graphics tablet that I can kind of draw on. That if I just spent more time with it, I could do everything on, but I kind of haven't yet. I've had it for 10 years. But I do use it to do like digital touch-ups and do clean-ups and kind of just make little effects. So I definitely use that side of it, and I couldn't work without that side of it. So yeah, it has to be scanned in digitally. Actually, if you look at the originals downstairs, they're originals kind of because they're actually black inks on printed blue lines. So I draw like the scruffy kind of drawings first in like black pencil, and then I scan them in and I print them out so the lines are like in pale blue because they don't get detected when you scan them in. So I don't have to rub all of them out again. I can just go over the blacks, and so the scan will only detect the black lines and leave everything else white after I've moved a few sliders around. So that's kind of it. So otherwise I'm using inks. I just use like normal pencils on cartridge paper for pencils because it gives me a bit of freedom to just go mad and just go rough. And then on the inks it's on like Bristol board, and I'm kind of using like lots of Japanese brush pens, not actual brush pens the whole time, but kind of have like vinyl tips that have a nice bit of kind of give and a bounce to them. And that kind of helps me when I'm drawing stuff like Transformers because it makes them look a little less rigid. It kind of gives them a bit more like livelihood, and because I end up drawing robots, a lot more life I can kind of give them, the kind of better. But it makes it kind of helps with like line weight as well, and making things look a bit closer by kind of drawing heavier outlines and then kind of thinner outlines for the back. So.
And is the colour put on digitally?
I have no idea who does any of it. Yeah, it is. The colour is all done digitally. Although reproduction now from scanning means that there are more people kind of going back to doing really nice like traditional acrylics and watercolour things if they can do. Just because before it was hard to kind of photocopy and reproduce them, but now the scanners are just a bit more high end, so you can do it that way if you want. But yeah, it's all done digitally. It's all done through Photoshop. Because of the kind of factory line system of comics, because they're monthly, that's why they have kind of everyone's job kind of broken up. That usually you have a writer, an artist, a colorist, a letterer, because it's hard to do on a monthly schedule to do. You can do all of them at once, but you're not going to get it out on time.
Why don't you do the colour yourself?
It just takes ages. It just takes ages. So it's taken me a day and a half to do kind of a page. I've got to get 20 of them out a month. There's not going to be any time for me to do the colours.
Yeah.
As
you're finishing, you're passing them on.
You're passing them on to someone else, and they're doing it. And those colorists are so adept that they can like colour a whole page in 3 or 4 hours, which and I could do that, but I would have to give up drawing to learn how to kind of colour that fast.
Yeah.
And I would still get paid the same amount as they would, but it would take me 2 days to do something that they did for 4 hours. So it's just I kind of like the lines anyway, but I find more and more artists that are coming in they're growing up with the digital equipment, so they're a bit more able to try and draw colours. They got a better colour sense, and a lot of them are female. It's like the strongest people with kind of colour sense and design sense coming through are like women artists, and so us dinosaurs does that.
And so you never went to college?
No, I did like a 1-year foundation course here at the Tech because otherwise they were going to cut off my bill. So I'm so interested. But it was interesting. The life drawing is so important, and that's the annoying thing. I was less good at being taught at that age. Not that I thought I knew it all, but I kind of thought that when something comes naturally when you're younger, you assume it comes naturally the whole time. But if you want to get better, you have to accept that you need to learn things. But that's why going to college is a good thing, because it will teach you discipline, it will teach you working with your peers, it will teach you, you'll get access to resources like life drawing and all the things like that I'm kind of, feels like I'm still learning on the job. So, cheers. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes, you at the front.
Did you get the idea of the statue with the vines from Al's ghost story?
No, I didn't get it from my sister-in-law's ghost story. No, I didn't. No, in fact, I think she got the idea of her story from me, so she owes me money for that. This is ridiculous. That's a good question.
I ask, do you miss not being able to choose the colours on your drawings? Is that something, or do you prefer to just do the line drawings and pass that on?
I've learned to realise that they are artists too, which sounds really reductive. But I think when I was starting off, I was a little bit like, right, here's the note for the colours. You do it like this and stuff, you know. And I think I realised that, well, you know, do it yourself if you're going to be like that about it. No, not really. I do give some notes if I'm very specific, especially when I'm working on my own stuff. I actually have to say about not doing colours, those 4 simple covers that I did myself, those are, I could do those block colours very quickly, and you can tell people that they're arty. But no, I don't miss it. I have enough kind of input at the beginning, and it's good if you send your input at the beginning rather than notes afterwards. So if there's any specific effects that you need, you're kind of doing it. But usually it's just magic when it comes in, because I kind of understand how they do it, but I don't. Do you know what I mean? And so it's, you're seeing another artist contribute to something and do the thing that you can't do, and turn your drawing into improve it like in every way, basically. So I was never interested as a kid in kind of colouring things. I think because I felt it slowed me down. I felt once I kind of penciled it and inked it, the drawing's done. Do you know what I mean? Like that's not true. That's just how my head would kind of process things. So I would never kind of go. I was tired of looking at that drawing by the time colours came into it. So when I worked professionally in comics, and I realised that hey, there's a whole other section of the industry will do that. So it kind of helps me. But that's why it's weird to see the younger. It's not weird to see the younger artists. It's interesting to see the younger artists because they're combining everything. That they're thinking colour along the way, and they're kind of finishing it in colour as opposed to you know. So that's something that you know you can have my job in 2 years' time. I will fight and lose and see me cry. So. Anyone else? We got a few more. Yeah.
Yes. Do you how can I word this? I had it and I lost it. Do you find yourself having to evolve with different comic styles as they go on through the years? Like, or would you consider yourself more of I'm going to do it my way and hope to God somebody likes it? Like Todd McFarlane in the '80s really pushed Spider-Man out of nowhere. Went from like kind of kiddie comics almost to really crazy stuff. And then there was like that '90s stuff where everything was kind of color washed.
Cross hatching
and you know, and ammo pouches and all kinds of stuff.
Shoulder pads everywhere.
Yeah. And then like the Frank Miller type stuff, and they're all black. Do you keep an eye on that stuff and kind of evolve or adapt your style accordingly, or do you just kind of say, hey, look, this is what I do.
This is what you get. This is what you get when you pay for Nick Roche. Deal with it. No, I try to like change. First of all, I try to change my style to suit every story anyway, and I find that I'm kind of evolving anyway, if not necessarily following strict industry styles or kind of trends. You're still kind of showing that you're versatile enough that you're going to serve the story. But yeah, I think with regard to Transformers, I was kind of pushing the style. I felt I was the Todd McFarlane there because I was like, no one's drawn as wonky as this before. And then, but it's a little bit like knowing your limits as well, because it's kind of, you can follow, the thing that happened in the 90s, as you know, is that everyone started drawing like Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee, and they weren't Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee. So if I kind of pick up on a trend that I see all the cool kids draw now, but it's not a style that comes naturally, then no one's gonna come looking for me anyway. I do try and keep an eye on it. At the very least, I'm not trying to sort of kind of be, you know, follow the trend. I'm trying to make sure that I haven't gone extinct, is kind of the thing. And if I'm kind of doing a story that drawing things in an interest, every story I try and draw it in a new way to keep myself interested. Because even my Transformers stuff, from one story to the next, even though it's still Transformers, I can't draw it the same way because I go nuts. and there's different tones to the story, so you can lean heavier on the mood and exaggerate things. So I kind of also am a big animation fan as well, so if I'm kind of learning new things, I'm trying to pick it up from the exaggeration and the kind of the postures and body language that I learned from animation. I think if you kind of learn from a different source, you're not just looking at comics as an inspiration, you're not going to go stale by trying to follow the trend or by refusing to. You're kind of maybe bringing in fresh influences. Is that kind of answer?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks.
Good question.
I've got another question.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Doctor Who angle.
Yeah.
Were you forced into what they wanted very much more?
A tiny bit. David Tennant was very particular about his chin. he wanted to be sort of like a bit more pronounced, a bit more superhero-y than he is. He's a handsome boy. I'm not criticizing. When you start, especially the way I was trying to draw a little bit more kind of comic booky, because a lot of those kind of Doctor Who comics, when you're like at Star Wars and Star Trek, when you're drawing actors, they can become a little bit stiff because you're drawing from photographic reference the whole time, and it's hard to loosen up. So I tried to almost think, was I designing Doctor Who the animated series? And I kind of draw it like that. I remember I didn't draw him, but I got hearing that other artists who have drawn the Ninth Doctor, drawn Christopher Eccleston, and he wanted to be drawn like Plug from the Backstreet Kids. He didn't want to be turned into like a superhero with kind of proportions. He's like, I've got sticky out ears, draw my sticky out ears. I've got a wonky nose, draw my wonky nose. And kind of he had an odd sort of self-image like that way. So I think he's easier to work with than like Tennant and Smith or whatever. I only ended up doing one issue. I fell ill on Doctor Who, so I never did as much as I wanted to. So I never kind of got to put my stamp on it. But I'd like to go back and do it one day. But with Doctor Who and Star Wars as well, I find it just you've got to get the reference right. You've got to get the technology right. The TARDIS has to look like the TARDIS. The X-wings have to look like the X-wings. It's for some reason I find it a bit more freeing in Transformers. Is there one up there?
Hey Nick, what's happening to Captain Ireland?
That's the best callback. 25 years.
And it can only be sold exclusively in Wexford Arts Centre.
Exactly. Yeah. Well.
I remember you drawing him in school, Nick.
I mean, if I go to my mum's attic, we might have a few. We can cobble. We can all go over there now. We'll all help look out. We put together what we can. I do keep thinking about it. I do keep thinking I could actually get money out of this. There's one more question in here. What's going on here?
I would love to know how you learn visual storytelling, because you're not just drawing the characters. So you gave us lots of examples how you were using panels in different ways, and a lot of it was like very cinematic. So I'm wondering, what point in your career you went from just like, drawing the character to actually learning how to tell a story with the page?
I don't think I caught on to that as much. It's only really in recent times I felt like I'm actively learning it. I think obviously I kind of figured out what you can get away with to make a comic and leave enough kind of speech balloons, but there is more to it than that. Like I think kind of just from like paying attention to other comic artists when they talk, listening almost rather than kind of assuming, like that thing I was saying about assuming that you kind of know it all. It's just something that will happen, that you realise that there is a kind of thought process. And when you hear other kind of comic artists talk about it, you're like, oh, okay, they're not just saying it comes naturally to them, they've had to do a bit of thinking. So it's listening almost more than observing. But then kind of is just looking at what works and stuff. And often what works is stuff that you want to copy anyway because it works. So stuff like Frank Miller, who's super, it's more about storytelling than the actual figure work and the actual finishes. It's about the pure sort of like, so I don't know, there's a bit of osmosis, but it's only in the last 10 years I kind of realised that the thing that's going to get you hired more is being able to tell the clear story.
It seems like it's a separate skill in itself.
I think it is. I think it definitely is. And to the point that I think you can be a comic artist without being the best artist in the world. As long as you can tell the story visually and frame stuff interestingly, it doesn't matter how many veins and kind of body hairs you've drawn on Wolverine, like it's kind of, if you can sort of see his action and how it moves from kind of like one inch to the next, and how it guides your eye around the page to make sure you're in control of what the reader sees. I think that's the older I get, that's the more valuable. But it is, I mean, that the influence come from listening and looking at other comics, but also from movies and kind of realising why do I enjoy the films that I enjoy, or what's stopping me. Like you see a flow of action, you see a car driving that way in one scene, and then the next camera shot's driving that way, but it's the same car and you're supposed to be following the journey. But because they've changed the visual language of it, it's kind of, Like you're clever enough to know it's still the same car and still going the same place, but that switch is enough to throw you in. It's the same in comics or whatever. If you saw a character traveling across the wilderness this way, and then the next panel you draw them facing the other way, same character, same journey, but your mind is going, oh, it was more satisfying when they were kind of like moving what I felt was forward. So it's just, yeah, little stuff like that, I guess. And you're right. Thanks so much.